Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam. All right. You hear me now? Can you please respond?
Yes, Maharaj, we can hear you clearly.
Okay. So you're asking me for nectar devotion. And what would you like to hear about nectar devotion?
Maybe the essence of nectar devotion, Maharaj, and
Yes. Yeah, and then?
And if possible, you can share some of the moments that you had with Srila Prabhupada.
All right. That's
Maharaj, before you begin, is it okay if I can quickly introduce yourself to the congregational devotees in Auckland? Just a quick intro about yourself. So, His Holiness Kavichandra Maharaj was initiated by Srila Prabhupada in 1971. Maharaj joined ISKCON Temple in Tucson, Arizona, and since that time, he served in various capacities in the United States and around the world. Maharaj was a traveling book distributor, selling Srila Prabhupada's books to libraries, universities, and individuals, including leading a book distribution team called the Radha Damodar Sankirtan Party, also preaching Krishna consciousness in Fiji, filling in as the general manager for the Radha Ras Bihari Temple in Juhu, India, and as the temple president in Tokyo, Japan. In Japan, in 1982, Maharaj took his sannyas vow. 5 years later, in 1987, Maharaj started to serve as a GBC member for Japan. Gradually, his GBC responsibilities expanded from Japan to cultural diverse places such as Thailand, China, Indonesia, Greece, and West Africa. Maharaj is also a committee member of the GBC Executive Committee, ISKCON Law Committee, and Revision Committee. So thank you so much for your wonderful service to Srila Prabhupada's movement, and we are honored and blessed to have your association. All over to you, Maharaj.
Okay, first time in New Zealand. Thank you very much. Shema Om Vishnupadaya, Krishna Pristaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhakti Vedanta, Swaminiti Namane, Namaste Saraswati Deve, Gauravani Pracharane, Nirvisesha Shunyavari Paschatya Desatana. So nectar devotion is very hard to find. The essence is the nectar, actually, that of devotion. The original title is Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean of the nectar of bhakti. And Prabhupada, some people call it a summary. Kusaprabhu Prabhu told me that Prabhupada was actually translating, but he just put it in like Krishna book, put it in like a look like prose rather than sloka by sloka. But it's a really amazing book. In my own life, when I joined the temple, somebody had one Bhagavad Gita, somebody had, I don't know, one or two of the Bhagavatams that Prabhupada brought with him. There was a paperback, one chapter of the Bhagavatam, not in supply, no Bhagavad Gitas. So, but we had nectar devotion. So they were reading that every night. And I consider myself very fortunate for that. I went through it many times. And then as more and more books came, I wasn't reading it very much. Although in the Nectar Devotion, there were so many references to the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam. So I was really always thinking, I got to read this 11th canto of the Bhagavatam because it gave so many amazing ideas and comparisons and everything. Then as time went on and I was managing and new people were coming and Hindus were coming, and I was always pointing out things. This should be like this should be like that, we should do this. And a lot of people didn't like that. And I actually started wondering, where did I get all these ideas, What kind of fanatic fool am I or whatever? And then one day I was on a ferry boat, 3 or 4 or 5 hours. And the only book I had with me that was before the database online and everything. And so I read the Nectar Devotion again on that trip. And I found all these things, all the things that I was thinking are standards and are important, we're all in Nectar Devotion. I heard some youth discussing in ISKCON Youth, and they were saying at first they didn't like Nectar Devotion because it had so many rules and regulations, and young people don't like that because that's how school is, and career or whatever. So, but actually, that's only a couple chapters. If we just look at the titles of the chapters, it's like really amazing. It starts out, if some people think, well, it's really high because at the end of Nectar Devotion, we have a lot of Radha and Krishna's intimate pastimes and this incredible psychological philosophy of Rupa Goswami analyzing all the different rasas and mixtures of rasas and emotions and how they all interact and how they're connected to love for Krishna, even with the, there's emotions, ecstatic emotions like horror. Horror doesn't sound ecstatic, but then when you read it, it's when Yashoda saw Krishna in the clutches of Kaliya, it was horror for her, but it was a emotion of ecstatic love because her object of love, Krishna, was in danger. So there's so many things like that, very, very amazing things that you would never find in any psychology class or philosophy class. They just don't know these things. But the very beginning, it just says, what is devotional service? The first stage is a devotional service. What is the eligibility to take to devotional service? Very simple. Then how devotional service surpasses liberation. Because mostly anybody who's hearing yoga philosophy or Buddhist or any kind of so-called spiritual philosophy, even Christians, they want liberation. Muslims, it surpasses liberation. The pleasure of liberation is compared to one drop in the ocean of bhakti and the nectar of devotion. Purity of how devotional service is pure. Then how to do it. How to do devotional service. Very practical book. Everyone should read it. Evidence regarding the principles. So up to there, it's very clean. Then the offenses to be avoided. So some, modern young people, they may not like that. What if it's offensive? But it's only to protect us. Just like you want to get a driver's license, at least even when I got one a million years ago, first there's a written test, and you have to know what all the signs mean. You have to know where you can park and what the speed limit signs mean and which side of the road and whether you can turn right on the red light. And, So you have to tolerate this. I have to tolerate getting cut off every once in a while. So we should know what, just like if you're driving, doing anything, you learn don't steal, you learn don't speed, you learn don't drive on the wrong side of the road, whatever. I don't know what side New Zealand uses. But, you can't say, well, in my country, we drive on the other side. That won't fly. Even in America, every state has slightly different laws. So I was driving across America. I turned right on a red light. Immediately, the police came. Oh, I said, I'm sorry. We do that in California. Well, this is not California, boy. Now you're in Arkansas or Texas or whatever. You got to know our rules. So it just means if you want to get the full benefit of practicing devotional service, we have to be careful. Then there's further consideration, techniques of hearing and remembering, because those are the main processes, hearing and remembering. Then the 5 most potent forms of devotional service. I guess you could say that's the essence. Living in Mathura, which basically means living anywhere where Krishna is being worshipped. Worshipping the deity, reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, serving the devotees, and chanting Hare Krishna. These are the 5 potent things. That a small attachment, even one of these, can arouse devotional ecstasy, even in a neophyte. So we can see how Prabhupada gave us all these things. Our basic temple life is simply doing these things. And then serious devotees and our grihastas, they do the same things at home. We can worship so many different forms of the Lord. Qualifications, spontaneous devotional service, so it's starting to get up there. Ecstatic love, how a person in ecstatic love asks, Arjuna asked that question. Qualities of Krishna, 64 qualities of Krishna, very fascinating. Hard to pin down what's the essence. Krishna is the essence of everything. Any one of these things. Then how you get stimulated to ecstatic love, symptoms, expressions of love for Krishna, additional symptoms, indirect ecstatic love. So many things, so many chapters. Some of them are very, very short. Ways of meeting Krishna. Then the different, rasas, neutral rasa, parental rasa, friendship rasa, parenthood rasa, conjugal love, laughing ecstasy, astonishment, compassion and anger, dread and ghastliness. That sounds not nice, but those can be ecstatic symptoms. Then mixing rasas called rasabhas, very interesting. Examples like putting sand in the sweet rice or something. Or you get sweet rice that's salty. Sweet rice is supposed to be very smooth and nice, but if it has sand in it, it's going to break your teeth. So it's just the most amazing book. Prabhupada put it out. It was first put out by the ISKCON Press, which was devotees who had, gotten jobs in printing presses and learned how to do things. It was a very big and thick book, and the pages fell out very easily, I remember. But it had a lot of nice pictures, but it was very easy to read. It had very big print. Prabhupada designed the books like that in the early days, like the Krishna book. Big pages, big print, very clear. So he gave us this nectar devotion, and I was taught it's just for devotees, but I'm not sure because, devotee, everyone's a devotee, but especially devotees who want to really practice, who really, want to do something. This book is very important. And they told us when I first read it, And they must, the devotees when I joined, many of them had been in LA when Prabhupada was there a lot. And so they had heard from him a lot directly, learned how to cook, different things. But they said, Nectar Devotion is such a book, we shouldn't try to even comment on it. We should just read it. So that's what we did. Every night we were reading Nectar Devotions. And I feel very grateful that I had that experience. There was no confusion in one book, It was a couple of years before we got Bhagavad Gita. We had a class, but there was only one book and couldn't just sit around reading the Bhagavad Gita. And it was a condensed one anyway. So this is Prabhupada. Myself, my experience with Prabhupada is mostly by reading his books. And we heard over and over and over again a few things that Prabhupada said, which he did say. The books are better than I am. And that's because how many devotees can personally associate with the Guru at the same time? How many can cook for him? I've seen gurus where 10 or 15 women are trying to cook for him. And then it's very hard for him even to taste everything. How many can massage? How many can wash his clothes? Not so many. How many can be in the same temple where he is, hear all the classes? But the books are everywhere. Books are always available. They're available after the Guru takes his association physically away from us. And Prabhupada also said that he put his best time of the day in the books. Everyone else was sleeping and he was totally absorbed in associating with the previous acharyas in order to make his purports. The translations of Bhagavatam, other books, Prabhupada didn't always do the translation. He had his Sanskrit scholar with him. They would do the translation word for word. Prabhupada would check it. Prabhupada's total absorption was the purports, his personal ecstasies. I was just listening yesterday. They have this thing going on now, books are the basis, 1 week. So it said youth panel. And we're American youth, so it wasn't exactly representative. And I was a little confused because they were only Indian-bodied American youth, when we do have a lot of others of all kinds of species. But they were saying like Nectar Devotion, if they didn't like it, there's some rules and regulations. But then when they read it, they start to really like it. But one of them was mentioning the purports. And the girl that was like the moderator, she said, I'm glad you said that, that the purports are just as important as the slokas. Because sometimes it's good to just read the slokas, go through a chapter, get an idea of the flow. But without the purports, we don't know what it's all about. There are so many commentaries. Prabhupada's like Yatha Rupa, his Bhagavad Gita is, his purports are his personal ecstasies. He said anyone can translate, but only he could make purports. So we heard that a lot. I also heard, I was on a book distribution party, and when Prabhupada would travel around America, the leader of our party would go flying off to be with Prabhupada. And I didn't fight it. In those days, I was very submissive. And I thought, well, you just do whatever you're told, you know. And I suppose I made a little progress by that attitude. But he would say service and separation is the highest. And that is our philosophy. And separation makes the heart grow fonder. So personally, I didn't have, you know, like any direct association with Prabhupada, except a few minutes when he gave me the Gayatri mantra. I heard some devotees saying how Prabhupada took like such a long time to teach them how to count. And I don't remember if he showed me or not. I think he said someone else can show you, you know, and it was very quick. Although he did ask me a question and I blew it. He asked me how many devotees are waiting downstairs, and I told him a number, and he was very big smile. He said, "Is there one Indian boy there?" And I didn't know it was Surup Damodar Maharaj. We didn't know him. He would come every morning and just go on the walk with Prabhupada because he was a student 50 miles away. So he had to get back. But he didn't, to me, look like Indian. I had never seen Indian except Prabhupada anyway. And a few pictures of Yogi, you know, Mahesh Yogi and different yogis. Otherwise, I know he just didn't, he didn't look Indian. He looks more Chinese. And I said, well, I think he's Japanese. And then Prabhupada was a little disappointed because he was very happy the Indian boy was getting the second initiation. One thing I heard Prabhupada say, which I thought was significant, because I hear a lot of different ideas on this, and this was not recorded. It was just, he had just come in Chicago and it was very chaotic. And temple president just kind of blurted out, Prabhupada, can the women go on the altar, you know, during their monthly time? And Prabhupada very casually said, why not? They're clean, aren't they? And just, that was it. And he did write one letter saying this. The Goswami Vritti says it's all right. So I was able to follow along on morning walks more than I deserved, because as a book distributor, sometimes you could just, like in Vrindavan and Mayapur, I just joined in. And I remember one time some of the big shots, whatever they were, somebody looked at me and said, what's he doing here? You know, this householder. And somebody else said, he's a book distributor. And they said, oh, all right. So I would follow along and do my best to try to listen to what Prabhupada said. One time I tried to say something, and I don't know how you remember. There was this crazy guy named Guru Maharaj Ji claiming to be Krishna. And he got very, very popular somehow or other. You know, nobody had ever heard of Krishna except from us. But he would dress up, play a flute, hold a flute anyway, wear mukuts. He was getting big crowds. He was using the football stadiums for his programs. And Prabhupada talked about him quite a bit. Some, you know, mostly joking. So somebody said something and I blurted out something about how the guy was always saying things like, well, Bhagavad Gita says such and such, but they had no book. He told people you shouldn't read books are for Kali Yuga, which is true. He said books are for Kali Yuga. And now that I'm here, it's such a yuga. So you don't need books. Just listen to me. And then Prabhupada turned around and he stopped and he shouted something. And I thought I must have said the wrong thing, you know, so I backed off. Later, as I listened to morning walk conversations, I understood Prabhupada was trying to start a conversation so he could point out the defects in this guy's, presentation. But I didn't understand that. But I was able to witness a few interesting things Prabhupada said, told a few times. One time in Vrindavan, we came out for the morning walk, and at that time it was a dirt road. There wasn't much traffic, occasional bullock cart, some farmers. They'd say Jai Radhe, and Prabhupada would say Hare Krishna. Mostly just forest on both sides. And it's very nice. So one day, just right outside the temple, a big noise came behind, and Prabhupada put his hands up and jumped. Ah, here comes Yamaraj, he said. It was a water buffalo. Now, I didn't catch on. I didn't know at the time that Yamaraj rides a water buffalo. And then Prabhupada said, he turned to whoever was close to him and he said, they say if you want to die very quickly, you should drink buffalo milk. And then he went on with the morning walk. That day he was very humorous and joyful. So, I witnessed like that. I was able to hear the classes every day because he used to spend time in Los Angeles in the winter. And that was his world headquarters. So he would stay there and everybody could visit him. He could really concentrate on writing. They always told us we can't go visit him. Don't bother Prabhupada. So we did that. Now I'm finding out when I see the Prabhupada memories, people around the same years in other countries, New Zealand, Australia, both, they were just going in to visit Prabhupada whenever they wanted. Prabhupada was having all kinds of darshans. But in Los Angeles, he'd just go in the garden every night and they would control, how many devotees could go in there. Go on the walk every day and we could all go out and watch him drive away and sometimes join. The morning class, greeting the deities. We noticed about Prabhupada, he was never late to greet the deities. He was always there ahead of time. On the morning walk, sometimes they say, we can walk further. He'd say, no, you can't keep Krishna waiting. One morning, I was dressing the deities. We were a little behind. I didn't put all new flowers that day. And Prabhupada came out and the time came, 7:00, and we weren't ready. There was a huge pile of flower stems right in front of the altar. Jayatirtha panicked. Prabhupada knocked on the door of the deity room. Knock, knock. Prabhupada's knocking. So immediately we just took a big broom and pushed everything to the Radha Krishna and opened the doors. Prabhupada paid obeisances. And at that time, we burned a lot of frankincense, incense, big smoke, and Prabhupada really liked it. Now I see we have to run out of the temple with the incense stick. But in those days, we burnt this charcoal, and really intense, so much smoke. Prabhupada liked it very much. And somehow we just kept pushing everything to the next altar and managed to let Prabhupada greet all the deities. And Prabhupada would stop at every picture of Krishna and put his hands on Krishna's feet, bow his head a little bit, move on. And then he would sit down and right away was Jai Radha Madhava. Except one day, and he'd invited all the GBCs, said they could take sannyas. So I think Rupanuga, Bali Mardan, Satsarup, and someone else, they all were taking sannyas that day. And that morning, Prabhupada didn't chant Jai Radha Madhava. he chant with great force, Bhaja Hore Mana Shri Nanda Nandana Abhaya Charanara. And Prabhupada was like bouncing on the Vyasa, sang that a few times. And then he gave the lecture and then he gave sannyas. So we saw Prabhupada in Mayapur. You know, I just tagged along, tried to see as much as I could. But mainly all of us, see, we have the same art. Prabhupada made a very, very intense effort to make sure everything he said was recorded. From the first thing, he had a big recording, and the recording machine, huge and reel to reel with big 8-inch reels and weighed like 25 kilos. And, you know, it was old, didn't work very well, but Prabhupada would make sure that they recorded everything. And it's a miraculous thing that all those tapes were preserved. And now we have all, you know, Prabhupada's lectures and morning walks. You know, it's a really phenomenal thing that Prabhupada got started. And so we have this intimate association on many levels, conversations with all kinds of people, formal, not formal, but in his room, you know, big people that they were bringing to meet Prabhupada. And then the way he associated with devotees, especially in the morning walks. I know many of my godbrothers, we especially like to listen to the morning walks. You can learn so much about Prabhupada from those morning walks. How he was so friendly with devotees. You know, he would joke with them and talk about different things. And he would listen to devotees talk about what's going on in the world. I had another experience where I talked to him. That was on a morning walk. And so the morning walk was, you know, started around 6 in the morning. You had to be back by 7, before 7. So I don't know, it was maybe 6:30. And Prabhupada just stopped. There was a small group. And he said, how many books were distributed yesterday? So nobody knew. At that time, book distributors sometimes were coming back 10 o'clock at night, and nobody was compiling the scores until the next day. So Prabhupada said, how many books were distributed yesterday? So I happened to know, I was friends with Tripurari at the time. And I said, Tripurari distributed 50 books, you know, which was really big for one person in those days. And Prabhupada looked at me and he said, only 50 books? So I somehow forgot my shyness and I said, well, it was just Tripurari, only one devotee, 50 books. Prabhupada shook his head. He said, only 50 books? So that Ramaswar heard that. So he really perked up. He went back to the temple and he made a blackboard and he put all the book distributors' names and down, and he put all the books across. And he made sure that everybody that came back would put in their scores. And then he would wait for the last devotee and he would type it out and then go take it up to Prabhupada. It was kind of like the beginning of the Sankirtan newsletter. And Prabhupada was very happy to see the book scores every day. And we know that that went on until the last days in Vrindavan. Prabhupada, practically they would only read him preaching reports. He didn't want to hear any problems or management questions or anything. But he loved to hear the preaching reports and the book distribution reports. So that's still the same. He's still around. He still likes to hear about book distribution. He likes to hear about any kind of preaching project, any kind of devotees doing any kind of devotional service. Everything we do should be a preaching project. Even just dressing nicely, or if we have a job and we work nicely, that's preaching. if we're students and we study nicely and we're good students, and that's also preaching. So, if we're just good people, they know we're Hare Krishna, but we're always nice, we're always polite, gentlemen, then that's good preaching. So this way, we want to know Prabhupada. Now we have so much access. At the time of Prabhupada, my life, we didn't have much access, except if we happened to be where he was. And even then, we kept our distance to some extent. So now we have all these videos to thank, Yadabar and everybody who collected all them. We have so many books now, devotees writing down their intimate experiences with Prabhupada. You can really learn how he could associate with anybody perfectly. They bring in a priest, Muslim, he just charmed everybody. Even when he called the scientists the demons, they would like it. Mayavadi's Indian professors, he would like it. They would remember 20 years later, oh, it was so wonderful when your guru told me I was stupid, because he did it out of love. And that's how he made the movement happen and, all these things. So I don't know how much time we have, or if I think we're supposed to leave time for questions. So that's about now, according to my clock. 45 minutes, 43 minutes. I hope I'm still unmuted. Yeah. We've been good luck this time. The internet is working so far. Since the last breakdown was a long time. All right, Prabhu. Haribol.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much. So we'll open for question and answers. So devotees, if you'd like to ask any question, you're most welcome.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances, all glories to Prabhupada. Thank you
Okay,
so much for this for sharing so much nectar. I actually have 2-3 questions, if you'll allow. So my first question is, in the starting you were mentioning that how Bhakti Rasamrita is about, is presenting such fantastic psychology. So I was just thinking if you could say something about that. What is the psychology of an aspiring devotee?
Well, we should all be aspiring devotees. The longer we try, the more we should be aspiring, because we see more and more how great Krishna is. So that's why we see the acharyas, Bhakti Vinod, so many, and Narottam, who we have a lot of access. So many songs are hankering what they want. I want to roll on the ground of Navadvip. I want to chant without offense. I want to, forget all my own desires for comfort and fame, that kind of stuff, So we should be aspiring for service. That's the real thing. Of course, Prabhupada, he wanted us to know about Goloka, and we might think I'd like to go there, but then how to get there is by service. So when we're chanting the holy name, Prabhupada gave us, there's a lot of esoteric translations. We can find different places which are good, but Prabhupada just gave the simple one. My dear Lord, please engage me in your service. Dear Radharani, please engage me in your service. And that's very, very deep, because that's the gopis, the most advanced devotees, the Brajbasis. They just want to serve Krishna. They have no other desire. So if we're thinking like that, how can we serve Krishna? So, we can serve the devotees, serve the guru. How can we serve the guru? I can't get close to him. We serve the devotees, serve the mission, That's the highest service. Should just want to have his, Trinadapi, Sunichena, Chodapi, Seshnina, Amanida Manadena, Kirtaniya Sadahari. And Bhakti Vinod made that song, Kabe Habe Bolo. It's just basically the Shishashak version. This Kabe, Kabe Habe. Kabe means when, oh when. When will I get this? Freedom from false ego and just desire to serve. When will I get this? Is that all right?
Yeah.
See behind me,
Thank you so much.
I'm sitting in front of the famous Philadelphia Art Museum, looking out over the Rath Yatra Festival. So that pillar behind me is a gigantic pillar of this art museum. But they have Wi-Fi, and my 5G, so-called 5G, is not really that great. So somehow I got this at work. But let's pray it keeps working. So the psychology that we read in the end of Nectar Devotion, the beginning has all the basic psychology, how to feel this and how to serve and, what to do and what not to do. In the end, it's very deep philosophical psychology, all the different rasas and how they interact favorably and unfavorably. It's really amazing. Foolish people say, well, bhakti is for the less intelligent. But you'll never find philosophers like Rupa Goswami, Jiva Goswami, the way they analyze things. Never find anybody that can even pretend for that. They're so shallow, the modern people. They don't know about emotions. They only know anger and fear and greed. The Nectar Devotion has so many subtle different emotions that they're all real and we know they are, but we don't really think about them. But all centered around Krishna. So we should be aspiring for love for Krishna. Love it means service. Service produces love. Okay? Because when we try to serve Krishna, we have to think for Krishna's pleasure, that's love. And Krishna will reciprocate and give us back his love, which is much more. All right? I see something on the side, but it's vertical. I can't read it.
It's the question, Maharaj, about how can we prepare our consciousness, the consciousness night before chanting. Sometimes we are busy in service and don't have much time to unwind before going to bed.
Well, hopefully we finished our rounds long before we're going to bed. That requires some discipline. But many devotees manage, even householders that are very busy. Mystically. Everything should be preparing us. The more we read, and nowadays, it's easy to be hearing lectures all the time or hearing somebody else chatting, hearing kirtans, even while we're sleeping, in the shower, we can always have something playing. That's a big advantage because we don't have a society where there's groups of people chanting all the time, like there used to be. There's prayers. Main thing is pray to Krishna, please help me. And just let me concentrate on the holy name. Because that's service. Just hearing very clearly the holy name without, we don't have to think of anything else. We will think of many things, That's, everybody asked about that. Everybody has that experience. We start chanting and all the things in our minds that we want to do today or we forgot to do yesterday, all pop up. And we have to somehow put it aside and just say, let me hear the holy name. That's really depending on Krishna. If we just say, okay, I only want the holy name. I only want to be with Krishna. I don't want anything else. Just become oblivious. Like sometimes in the park, we see a boy and girl together and they're embracing very intimately. And they just totally forget. I know because I did it when I was a kid. You just totally forget that there's a world out there. There's only you, these two people. So that's how we should be for chanting the holy name. We're just with Krishna, and everything else will go on without us. And then when we go to try to do whatever we have to do in the world, Krishna will be guiding us all the time. We've all experienced that sometimes. Pray for steadiness and all that's described in Nectar Devotion. Every detail of all these things is answered in the Nectar Devotion. Stages of, Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Vajana Kriya, Nishta, all these stages, all the way up to Prema. They're all described in great detail. So study that. And now we have, you can find a recording on Amala Bhakta very easily, reading the whole Nectar Devotion. And you can bless me. I would like to, have these aspirations really purely, like Bhakti Vinod and Narottam Das Thakur. Yeah. It'd be wonderful.
Thank you, Maharaj. Is there any other question that someone would like to?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Hare
I'm
Krishna.
here.
I'd like to ask a question regarding what you were just saying about the stages and how we read in Nectar of Devotion that in Sadhana Bhakti there's Vaidhi and Raganuga, and obviously I'm not qualified or super neophyte, but just wondering if you have any advice to accelerate the process so that we can come to a more spontaneous platform of devotion.
Well, I would like to do that myself. The process works. And Utsahan Nischayat Dhairyat. That's also Rupa Goswami. That's a nectar of instruction. But it's not like, you have to do this. If you want this result, this is how to get it. That's what it's all about. Just like if you buy a phone, they give you an instruction book. You get a new program for your computer or whatever. So the Utsahan means enthusiasm. That has to be there. But then Utsahan Nischayat, that means perseverance, steadiness, because we're enthusiastic, otherwise we won't even try to do something. But then there's always difficulties along the way. And then we have to hang in there. But even when we hang in there, we think, well, I'm not getting the result yet. So then the most important thing is the patience. Wait patiently, because Krishna will give us when he's ready. And when we are not hankering after some particular, result, and we're just trying to please Krishna, then things come, we'll be happy. So, Utsahan Nischayat Dhairyat Tat Tat Karma Pravartana. These 6 things, these will enhance our spiritual life. These are necessary. And then it's got 6, what to avoid. Achahara, prayasascha, prajalpo, niyamagraha. It's very simple, You just take the process and try apply it as best we can. Just like walking. Bhakti Marg Swami has walked across Canada. That's very far, 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers, 4 times. How did he do that? One step at a time. He never took 2 steps at one time. One step, one step, one step, one step. So many hours a day. And he gets there. Meets a lot of people along the way. So same thing. One mantra, one mantra, one mantra, one mantra. Do some service, serve the devotees. Pray to Krishna, help me, help me, help me. Vaishesika Prabhu. Someone asked him once, what is the translation? What does the Maha mantra mean? He said, I really liked his answer. He said, it means I need help. I need help. You have to help me. I can't serve Krishna. But if Hare Radharani, ask Krishna, please accept this devotee, he will. Tesham Satyata Yuk. Everything is there. Bhagavad Gita also. Especially Nectar Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, really give all the details. Break things down. Answer these questions. Chant the holy name, serve the devotees, follow the regulated principle. Basic things Prabhupada wrote everybody when they got initiated. Take only Krishna Prasadam, chant the holy name, follow the regulated principle. He'll take care of us. And be patient, because millions of lifetimes we've been creating all kinds of bad karma and all kinds of obstacles. Now we're trying to get over it all in a few days or a few weeks, no. We're so fortunate to be this far that we can associate with devotees and we can read Prabhupada's books, and we have the association of Rupa Goswami. It's quite a phenomenal thing that Prabhupada has given us. That's the causeless mercy of Gaur Nitai. And another thing I heard Prabhupada said that we could never find it. Sometimes the recorders ran out, But Prabhupada was at the installation of Gaur Nitai, big deities in Los Angeles. And Prabhupada was, I think they might have been the first big Gaur Nitai. And Prabhupada was so excited that day, you could really feel it. I was standing right behind him because I would always be out late on book distribution. I'd fall asleep in classes, so I always started standing up. So when they opened the curtain for the first darshan, Prabhupada just like instantly was in front of the deities. I didn't see him move. I just saw that I was watching him I thought I was very closely watching him sitting there. He was chanting, I don't know. But just all of a sudden he was in front of the deities, the obeisance, Dandabat. Then he was standing there very, very, devoutly, like he always did, like this. He was praying. I just wondered what he was praying exactly. I'd like to know. But then he came back and he said, our goal is, to join the dancing party of Radha and Krishna. But in order to do that, we have to get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. Then he said, to get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, we have to get the mercy of Lord Nityananda. Then he said, to get the mercy of Lord Nityananda, we have to get the mercy of Jagai and Madai. So I took that we have to go out and meet the Jagais and Madais and tell them about Lord Chaitanya. And by that process, we'll already be on the highest platform. We may not realize it. By any service like that, the things that Prabhupada had given us, worshiping the deities, cooking for the deities, these are things that Radharani and the gopis do. Making garlands, they're very, very exalted things. So, just realize what we're doing, And Prabhupada said, we're doing the same thing Mother Yasoda did, addressing Krishna, we're cooking for Krishna. But we're not the same as her. Consciousness is different. But keep doing it and keep praying and we'll get that consciousness. All right?
Thank you,
Hang in there.
Maharaj. One
Say-
more question. Sorry, it came up on Facebook from Sumukhi Mataji. She's saying, Hare Krishna Maharaj, as co-members of SCON have advanced an emphasis on culture coming from an Indian background has been implemented in the mood of raising the standards. Is this to be expected as SCON grows? It seems Prabhupada didn't establish the movement on the basis necessary.
What do you mean by raising standards?
That was it was typed in the Facebook, so maybe Mataji is listening. She can type more, and then we can get what she meant actually.
Prabhupada gave us very high standards that we haven't even begun to realize yet. But if you mean fancy rituals and things like that, which it is very attractive to the Hindu community, that can be valuable and also a distraction. It can attract the Hindu background people, but it's not a higher standard necessarily. The standard is our consciousness, not just doing things, not just certain rituals, certain movements and things like that, certain mantras even. The Maha mantra means Maha mantra. So we want to do other things. It's meant to engage our mind. If it does that and helps us focus our mind so we can chant better and more clearly, then very good. Otherwise, we have to be careful. And I was listening to a discussion with some youth, Indian youth, who were very big preachers. They had made a super successful kindergarten, Sunday school in their temple, and gradually had expanded it to, doing seminars on that kind of stuff. They were saying their parents, who grew up in India, they were very satisfied in just doing all the rituals. But they, growing up in America and going to the Western schools, they didn't get anything out of the rituals at home and stuff. They wanted more essential thing. They wanted much more than that. And that's what we really need to increase. Intimate association, dadati pratigrinati goyamakyati prichati. That's another verse of the Isha, nectar of instruction. How to associate with devotees. We need to work on that much very much, sharing our thoughts, especially our good thoughts, our good experiences of being devotees, and sharing prasadam, taking prasadam, giving gifts to devotees, accepting gifts from devotees. Both have to be there. If I want to give you a gift and you won't take it, then I'll be frustrated. You may think I'm not worthy, I shouldn't take anything from you, but if I want to give it, you should accept it, to make me happy. Prabhupada was giving us the greatest gift, which is all these books. And that's what we should really be digging into. But we should raise our standards of association. Our movement is known for kind of impersonal dealings amongst devotees, which is very phenomenal because we have the most personal philosophy. Even outside observers, they know that the Hare Krishnas have the highest philosophy, the most philosophy, but the way they treat each other is not very good compared to other religions where they really get a family thing going. Everybody's helping each other all the time and everybody's very close. We need to work on that. Intimate association with Krishna in the center. Especially modern people, that's what they're looking for. Substance, not form. They want substance. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? Prabhupada gave us, see, if you really know why you're doing something, then you can do any kind of ceremony and ritual, really get into it. If you don't know why we're doing this, why did women cover their head? Why did men shave their head? Why do you dress like this? If we don't know why, then it just looks like we're being forced. You know why? Then why we get up early, why we do this, then Prabhupada told us what to do, how to do it, and why to do it. Everything is there. So take advantage of it, please. Especially it's all in Nectar Devotion. Very, very amazing book.
Thank you, Maharaj. One more.
Rupa Goswami's most important book.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, one more question on our chat. It says, when distributing books on the street, how can we gauge if we are pleasing Guru and Gauranga in every exchange we have?
Well, if you feel good afterward, people go away happy. If people get angry, then we better think twice. I sometimes just think, well, I know the Prabhupada, like book distribution, the first thing is get your feet on the ground, just get out there. That's pleasing. And just by your effort, results don't necessarily mean that the Lord was pleased with you. The number of money you get or something. But if you feel really good about it afterward, if people thank you for giving the book, many things. Krishna's in the heart. We're really dealing with Krishna in the heart of the people, not only just the people's external person. That all right?
Yes, Maharaj, thank you so much. So we'll conclude here, Maharaj. And once again, thank you so much for taking your time out and being with us. I'll request His Grace and Anvash Prabhu to please conclude from here.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Pranam. On behalf of all the devotees in Auckland and also those listening on this forum, I'd like to thank you very much for giving your valuable time and association and giving us a sense of the nectar of devotion and a wonderful association with Srila Prabhupada. It's quite insightful how you perceive your dealing with Srila Prabhupada, and it was like taking us journey back in the 70s, which we're not privy to, but we get association through your dialogue. I would really like to thank you very much, Maharaj. I remember
Thank
you. I remember you from Fiji.
Ah,
You, you were a guest at that time, and you were preaching very rigorously.
Vanaprastha.
One of the past at that time. So, Maharaj, thank you very
One of
much.
the best years of my life with Upananda.
Yeah, Upananda, Astasiddhi, and there was an Italian devotee. I forgot his name. Yeah, you were the pioneers preaching in Fiji at the time, early 70s, 74, 75, like that. Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Maharaj, for a wonderful association, and we hope to see you again in this forum. Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Okay, now,
Devotees, I want
I
to like
turned
to
my
tell for-
camera, so if you see what, you can't see anything clearly, but straight ahead in my camera, in front of this art museum is a very popular place. And along the footpath, straight across from it, is the Rath Yatra Festival of India. And so many people are walking through it. It's very ecstatic. So I'm going to go back down there. All right. So Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Kavichandra Maharaj. Jai.
Thank you,
Hare
Maharaj.
Hare,
Hare
Hare Rama,
Krishna.
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, if you don't mind, I'm going to leave this meeting.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, and I hope to see you again.
Yes,
Thank you
Maharaj.
so much for showing
you.
us the
Like to
Ratha
travel.
Yatra.
I was in Fiji for almost a year, more than a year, but I never got to New Zealand. And I was in Bali, which is also close. Never got. Okay, Hare Hare.
Hare Hare, Hare Bol. Thank you, Hare Krishna. Hare Prabhu. So, Prabhu, you like to brief what's the program for this evening? Kavichandra Prabhu.
Yeah, so this evening we'll start with the Kirtan. Prabhu, are we starting early with the Kirtan? What time we are starting the Kirtan? Radhesha Mataji?
Prabhu.
Are we starting the Kirtan around 6:30? Am I right?
It's not advertised for 6:30, advertised for 7 o'clock. So,
Okay, so at 7 we'll have a Kirtan, and then 7:30 we'll have His Holiness Devamrita Maharaj giving the class on the essence of Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Yeah.
So that's what tonight. So same.
okay. See you
same
everybody.
time.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Prabhu. See you in the evening. Jai. Prabhupada ki jai.